In this lesson, we're going to be looking at legislation. The first thing we're going to look at is something called intellectual property. And all this is a piece of work, idea, or an invention which may be protected by copyright or patent. Um, these include things like books, films, movies, games, apps, that sort of thing. So they can sometimes be subject to copyright and can't be used by somebody else. Trademark. This can be a name, a slogan, a word, a design, or a symbol, or anything really that identifies a product or organization. So if you think of the McDonald's slogan, for example, um, is it "I'm loving it"? I think it is. If Coca-Cola just decided to use that as their slogan as well, it would not be allowed, as "I'm loving it" um, is from McDonald's, isn't it? If you hear that, you know it's from McDonald's. Um, and you'll notice these as you'll see a little TM or an R symbol on the packaging. It's very small, but it is visible on some packaging. So if you look at the McDonald's logo, you'll see it's like, I think it's very small, but it's there. And I think it's the R symbol on McDonald's, but it's very, very small. It is there. Um, Right. Um, Again, it's a law or legislation that protects someone's work which they have created. And copyright begins as soon as someone has completed the work. So if you was to make a poster tomorrow, if you finish that poster, then copyright starts. So no one can use that poster without your permission. Um, Copyright includes anything that has been published. And by published, we mean things like photographs, images, graphics, magazines, music, DVDs, that sort of thing. So anything published is what's being put online or in a book, something like that. Um, so how can you use published resources? So if you're looking for a picture off the internet, I want to use that in my work. How can you use that without getting into trouble? Um, One of the main ways is contacting the owner of the image and asking permission to use it. You do that by either emailing them, calling them, whatever, and there's contact details on the internet for these things. Um, but you might have to pay a small fee to use it. Um, However, there are some circumstances where we can avoid copyright altogether. So we don't have to ask permission and we don't have to pay a fee. If the work is used for educational purposes, e.g., yourselves, if you're doing coursework and you get a picture from the internet, you can use that in your coursework as long as you reference that picture where you got it from. So if it's from moodboard.com, you'll have to reference this from moodboard.com. And if it tells you the author, to put the author as well. It doesn't always say the author, but it might do. Creative Commons. This is a license agreement the creator chooses and lets you use the person's resource. So, in other words, the person that holds the copyright, e.g., you, for example, if you made something, you may grant someone Creative Commons license, allowing them to use the material. There are different types of Creative Commons licenses as well. The first one is Creative Commons by. That means you can use the material, however, you must quote where it's from. So they'll tell you can use it as long as you tell them where it's from. This is and Creative Commons by NC. The NC means non-commercial. So you can use the material, however, you can't use it for commercial purposes. In other words, if you make money from that material, you can't use it at all. And if you do make money, any money you make, you have to pay to the people. You might hear on YouTube sometimes about people being copyright strikes, and that's because they are making money from that video. So then they take the money from the YouTube creator, if you like. Copyright free and royalty free. What is the difference between these two? Copyright free basically means that piece of work or piece of media is not protected by copyright. However, a fee may have to be paid in order to obtain the work, but your use will not be restricted. In other words, you can use that work wherever you want, you can make money off it, whatever, as long as you paid that small fee at the start. Royalty free means a one time fee is paid in order to use the piece of work. Um, in other words, it is copyrighted, but as soon as you pay for it, the one-off payment, you can use it in your work. Um, Classification and certification. Different countries have laws on what is allowed and what isn't allowed to be shown or seen on TV, in books, in games, that sort of thing. There are several factors that affect classification with regards to age ratings. Things like does the TV show or game have violence in it? Does it have strong language? And does it have scenes of a sexual nature? So if it has any of those things in it, it can really affect the classification of that particular film. We'll look at that in a second. Um, Certification is a process of informing the audience on the suitability of content. So even you might be sat in the cinema, and before the film starts, a black screen pops up, and it tells you the name of the film, and it tells you the age rating of the movie, and it's just thinks about the target audience really. If a parent if a parent takes their child to the cinema to watch Spider-Man, for example, and Spider-Man's a 15, but that kid's 5, it might make them think twice about letting them watch the film. Um, Certification and classification, these are covered differently depending on the type of media. So, the two big ones really, there's one called BBFC, and that stands for British Board of Film Classification, and that is a film rating. So you might see U, PG, 12, 12A, 15, and 18. So these again depend on what's in the film. If it's a U, that means it's child friendly. There's nothing really going on in the film. A PG stands for parental guidance, and that means that it's okay for a child, but some scenes may upset the child. A 12 means it's suitable for 12-year-olds. I believe 12A is 12 adults, just to have an adult with you to watch it, and obviously 15 and 18. PEGI, Pan-European Game Information, and that's for computer games. So how you rate computer games. So they start at 3, 7, 12, 16, 18. So FIFA, for example, there's not much violence in FIFA, is there? So FIFA's always going to be a 3. There's nothing in it really. Going up to 18, your things like Call of Duty, your what else is there? Grand Theft Auto, that sort of thing. They're all in the 18 range. Um, Data Protection Act. What this is how a company keeps your data safe. They are set rules for people or businesses that store information, and it gives you, the person that's given them the data, some rights and how they use it. People who use the data are called data users. So, for example, if you make an account on Google, you put all your details in. Google are data users because they use that data. And people who provide the information are called data providers. Because you've set that Google account up, you're the data provider. You're providing Google or whoever with that data. There's a few main points for Data Protection Act. I'll go through some of them, not all of them. You can pause it and look at these. If you collect data about people for one reason, you must not use it for different reasons. For example, if a company collected data from me because of I ordered a product, they cannot sell that data to anybody else, or they can't use it for another reason. You must not give people's data to other people or organisations unless they agree. So, Google, go back to Google again. You put your details in. You put your address. You put your address in. You put your email in. You put your name. Put your date of birth. Google, by law, cannot sell that data to somebody else. They have to ask you permission before they do so. And usually it's a little tick box that says, "Can we share information with a third party?" And that means, in other words, Google can share that data with somebody else. I always recommend not ticking that box if you can. People have the right to look at data that any organisation store about them. So if Google has data about you, you can ask Google, say, "Oi, can I see my data, please?" And they have to, by law, send you every single piece of data they have about you. And you must not send data to places outside of EU. That means any countries or European economic areas outside of the UK, you can't send data unless there are levels of protection. That means how safe is your data going to be? So in the UK, your data is quite safe. However, if they sent that to Afghanistan, are their security levels same as us? Probably not. Um, Organisations that store data about people must register with the Information Commissioner's Office. And what they do is they make sure that any data you hold is up to date, your security is up to scratch, that sort of thing. If you store data about people, you must make sure that's secure and well protected. So this is where the IFO come into play, the Information Commissioner Office. They make sure that your systems are up to scratch and that your data is protected. What you wouldn't want to happen is you store data about 1,000 people, and all of a sudden your computer's hacked or your network's hacked. Their hackers have got all that information about people. The biggest one was about people's talk a few years ago. Talk was hacked, and they leaked thousands of passwords, and then they were fined millions of pounds. Um, if an organisation has data about you that is wrong, then you have the right to ask them to change it. So, for example, if go back to Google again, they have data about you but is incorrect. Your name might be spelled wrong, your date of birth might be wrong. You have the right to change that, and they should change it for you. Last one then. This is defamation. Defamation, slander, and libel are offences. In other words, you can't say or write nasty or untrue comments about someone without proof. So if you say something, it's slander, and if you put it in writing, it's deemed as libel, and it is quite a serious offence because it can really affect people because it can make people avoid them. It can make people think they're horrible people. In actual fact, the comments you made are either untrue or they're just really nasty comments about people.